This is for those who believe in the potential of science, making brave choices, choosing to push the boundaries. This is why we believe in what science can do.
Hello everyone, is my mic on? Awesome. So, hi, as I was just introduced, my name is Makosinski. I'm 18 years old. I'm from Vancouver/Victoria, Canada, and I'm super excited to be here today. And I'm here today to kind of talk about inventions and my story. And the one question that I get so frequently each time I give a talk and afterwards when people come up to me is, I have this great idea, I have so many great ideas, but I just don't know how to get started. So I'm here today to tell a little bit of my life story and then give some advice at the end for all of you guys on making stuff in general and just life advice. I just finished high school last year, so I feel for you all going through puberty, and same for the parents, et cetera, et cetera. So as a kid, I wasn't given a lot of toys, so I had to make my own. I had a little hot glue gun, and I used to take garbage from around the house, like cereal boxes, spoons, old medicine boxes and stuff like that, and I would piece it together and create so-called inventions. Another thing that I started doing was just playing with electronics. In fact, my first toy was a box of transistors, as you can see. My mom was pretty afraid I was gonna get stabbed by them because they're pretty sharp, but my dad was like, it's okay, we'll just leave her to it. And I think that's where my passion for science really stemmed from, was just always looking around me and realizing that everything around us is science, and all your questions can mostly be answered by science or common sense. So I have a little video for you today of, what should I say? It's basically me exhibiting some of my so-called first inventions. Of course, they never worked, but the idea of creating stuff with the simple resources around me and trying to better my own situation in the first place was kind of always there from the start. So if you could please play the video.
Okay. This invention was my second invention. And it is called creation. The one I just showed you is called invention, because that's the first one I made. Now this one, you see this flat one is post, so he can sit down on him, or I can sit down on him. Creation. But I don't sit very long because he can break, even.
So there's a lot, you can see there's a whole bunch. We actually have hours of footage of me just talking and talking about all these imaginary lands and creations and everything I had. So my parents kind of noticed two things from a young age, which was that I loved to do two things the most: tinkering and talking. So I joined the local science fair in grade 6 because a lot of my old friends from a school that I had moved had to do it as part of their school curriculum, and my new school didn't enforce it. So that's me at a very tragic time of my life when I looked like Harry Potter, and everyone would come up to me and be like, "What a handsome boy you are." And I'd be like, "Thank you," and just walk away because I didn't want to shatter their dreams. So, my first science fair project ever, I was in grade 6, so I was around 11 or 12 years old, and I had no experience whatsoever. And I didn't have any teacher to help me, so my parents were kind of dragged along, as you are with your first kids, I think, as any project you have to do for school. And I was just comparing two laundry detergents. Tide works better, in case you wanted to know. But the first time I ever did science fair is the first time that I caught something called the science fair bug. And for some people who've done science fair, they may not have the same experience and they might have absolutely hated it, which, if it's not for you, it's not for you. But for me, I loved it because I got to work on a project or any area of interest for as long as I wanted after school, and then I got to talk about it to a lot of other people, and then they'd ask me questions, and hopefully I could answer them. So I started participating in science fair in grade 6, and then from grade 7 and on, because I did this until I was in grade 12, or till grade 12 was my last project, I was doing projects related to energy harvesting, because that was kind of what I was always interested in, was just electronics, so kind of just branched into there. I experimented with piezoelectricity, Peltier tiles, solar cells, and things like that. And when I was in grade 10, actually, when I was in grade 9, my friend in the Philippines, as I'm half Filipino and half Polish, told me that she had failed her grade in school because she didn't have any electricity. So she didn't have any light to study with at night. And for me, coming from like awesome like first world country and everything like that, that was like a complete shock for me. And I remember when I visited the Philippines and India, I was just so overwhelmed with the lack of resources that people had, yet they were still very happy. However, I did want to help my friend, so I thought, well, why don't I use my science fair project to help her out? So when I was in grade 9, I actually made a very simple, all my projects are really simple, you guys can make them too. I made a piezoelectric flashlight. So with piezoelectric crystals or discs, I'm not an expert, but basically how they work is if you put pressure on them or slightly vibrate or bend the crystals, a small amount of electric charge is produced. So I just used a gear and a crank. I made a little noisy flashlight that you could regularly see on the market. However, it was kind of tedious and normal, so I said, oh, well, that's not very good. So for my grade 10 project was when I created the hollow flashlight, which is a flashlight that runs off the heat of the human hand. So how this works is I use an existing technology. They're called Peltier tiles or thermoelectric generators. And if my hand is the tile, and I heat one side of the tile and I cool the other, a small amount of electricity is produced. So it's very simple. I basically heated one side with the palm of my hand, and I cooled the other side of the tile with a hollow aluminum tube. And this allowed for maximum air convection currents to flow through and around the tube and cool it even further. So basically, the greater the temperature differential between the hot and the cool side, the more light and electricity is produced. I ran it through a quick circuit, and voila, I got a working product. And the two pictures on the side there are of Peltier tiles. Oh, they're the same picture. That was supposed to be a different one. That's okay. I'm tired. So that was my project for grade 10. And this is the very first prototype. I used the first one I used 4 very small Peltier tiles. And then I used slightly bigger ones. I actually lost the first flashlight ever. I think it's in like a museum and they haven't gotten back to me, so it's somewhere there. I have to find that this summer. So yeah, that was it. And then I actually have more recent models. And if you would like to come up afterwards and see some of the flashlights, I actually just recently 3D printed some of the casing, so it's kind of cool looking. You can come up to me afterwards and you're welcome to see it. So what happened? So grade 10, I entered my local science fair. I went to the Canada-wide science fair from that. And then my marine science teacher, I believe it was, told me about like, hey, have you heard about the Google Science Fair? I think that was its 3rd year running. And I was like, yeah, it sounds great. So I totally forgot about it. And then on the day of the deadline, I was like, oh yeah, I should totally apply. So I submitted my written report. I filmed a quick video for part of the submission, posted on YouTube, and was done with it. Somehow, very luckily, in the beginning of grade 11, I was selected as one of the 15 finalists to go to Google and participate in the fair, where I won my age category, blah, 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 and I went to the Intel Science Fair afterwards. Have any of you guys gone to the Intel, ISEF? Couple, one, two. You might be a little young to go because it actually is like a very long process, but it's kind of like the dream of science fairs. If you guys love science fair or want to build a project, ISEF is amazing. And the one thing that I really found about science fair that I didn't find at school, other than just doing something I actually wanted to do, was that the people you met and the other kids there were basically all in the same mindset, so everyone just got along very, very well. Needless to say, there was a little drama as always, but you know, that's normal. And yeah, so that was kind of my story. And then for my grade 12 project, which I also went to Intel for, that was called the e-drink. I don't have a picture of that, I'm sorry. And it's a coffee mug that harvests the excess heat of your hot drink and converts it into electricity, so you can eventually give your iPhone or iPod a little boost of energy on the side. Both of these inventions I debuted on The Tonight Show with Jimmy, and it was a lot of fun. And I've gotten to have a lot of very cool experiences with talking with other people about my work through science fair, which is something I never expected. When I made the flashlight, I thought it was super lame. I was like, nobody's gonna like this, but apparently some people did. So yeah, what am I doing right now? I am in first year university. I'm at the University of British Columbia, so UBC, which is in Vancouver. And a lot of people, especially over the past couple of years, with the amount of press I've gotten and just attention in general, people have been like, oh, well, obviously you're doing engineering, right? And I wasn't really sure, because I think I got a little confused on whether engineering was something that everybody else expected and wanted me to do, or if it was what I wanted to do. And especially with my parents always talking about work and like science and being so great and blah, 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 which it is, I just got very confused on what I wanted. So I'm kind of taking my first 2 years of university to do a very general assortment of courses. I took chemistry this year, I took script writing, a whole bunch of different stuff, so that I can still continue to do all my activities and still invent during my spare time and still be able to manage my course load. I'm hoping currently, it'll probably change, that I'll go into design for inventions and products and prototypes, stuff like that. But I really have no idea. I kind of want to keep on talking to people on some sort of forum about the latest entrepreneurs or inventors or stuff like that. But yeah, I don't really know. So before I go, I kind of want to give some advice. And it kind of changes each time I do a talk. I'm always adding pieces of advice or taking stuff out, because it's also kind of like self-therapy for myself, because whatever's going on, I'm like, oh, maybe I should put this in. And I know when I was in high school and middle school, I'm an only child, so I didn't have like someone, well, I did have people I looked up to, but I didn't have someone who's right there talking to me and giving me advice, and they had gone through the exact same thing. A year or two ago. So this is my advice to all of you, and hopefully it will help you invent, and then afterwards we'll have a Q&A, and we'll probably have a lot of time for that. So my first piece of advice actually comes from Thomas Edison, and he says, to invent, you need a good imagination and a pile of junk. And that's very true, because that's how I started. I started off with a hot glue gun and a bunch of garbage that I was just piecing together, and that was it. And I really think you have to actually minimalize the amount of distractions you have surrounding you, especially when you're trying to make things. And for me personally, I always look for a problem, whether it's a friend's problem, or a problem that I'm experiencing myself that's really simple and that I could solve. And then maybe after I figure out how to solve that, I can look at a bigger world application. So yeah, that's my first piece of advice. And actually, something that I've kind of more recently come to terms with is that to reconnect with your creativity, you actually have to disconnect from all the technology and all the distractions you have. How many here have a phone? Put up your hand. Okay, that's a lot. So for me, I'm 18. I didn't have my first phone until this September, when I had to get a phone because I was moving out of the house. And we went to the store. My dad was like, I'm not buying you an iPhone, like it's too expensive. So I was like, okay. So I got one of those, like, it's on this program called Chatter, and it's just like a phone you can text on, and it had a screen, etc. So I was like, okay, let's get this so I can text people. We were halfway driving home with this phone, and I went, stop, Dad, I want a flip phone. So we returned to the store, and my dad went to the manager and was like, excuse me, my teenage daughter would like a flip phone. And I have a flip phone, and I'm fine with that. I have an iPod, so I can do some technology, but I really want to minimize my distractions. Whenever I'm concentrating on a project or something at hand, I always shut down my Facebook account. I completely deactivate it. I very rarely, I'll post on social media, but it's not a priority of mine, because my priority is working on myself and improving what I make for others and myself, I guess. So yeah. My second piece of advice is that opportunities are created and not found. I actually heard this on one of Casey Neistat's vlogs, but I just wanted to put it in. If you notice me carrying around a camera and wearing sunglasses, that might be because of him. Anyways, so what this means is that, opportunities are going to open up for all of you guys when you're getting older, and they're going to appear. But you won't be able to actually have those opportunities, or like opportunities like really stereotypically is like a door and you can go through it and you can have that opportunity. But if you don't have the key, if you don't have the skills and the talent and the time and sweat you put into it, into making the key or developing that skill, you won't be able to go through the door. So very simply, you got to keep working on whatever you're passionate about. And if someone's like, oh, that's not really cool. Like when I was in middle school, I didn't show photos of it, but I had a boy's haircut, glasses, braces, I wore boys' clothes. I was not the kid that everyone was like, I'm going to hang out with Anne after school today, because I wasn't very cool. And I was really scared. I didn't tell any of my friends I did science fair even, because I was just so afraid of being judged and like thought of as a nerd or something terrible. And a nerd is something cool, because that means you're actually smart in an area that is cool. So like there's no point in being scared of what people are thinking about you or judging you, which is actually another one of my points that I will lead on to, which is Tyler Oakley, and he says, I love this quote. When I heard this quote, I heard it before I went to Google, and it just completely, like for some reason, clicked with me, and he really like helped shape my personality and just be so much more braver. And it's, care less about what other people think, because at the end of the day, everyone is so worried about how they're coming across, is that they're not judging as much as y'all think they are. And I think this is really important, especially if you're a teenager or even an adult and you're not comfortable in who you are. You have to rock it. You have to be confident. And if your passion is astronomy, I was about to say astrology, and I was like, nope, that is wrong. Or if it's insects, I used to love bugs. I used to eat them all the time and have all these containers I used to spray before I went to school. Or, I used to do computer programming classes after school and stuff like that. Just be brave about it and be like, yeah, I'm going to this class after school, or do you want to come along? And you really need to just be open about who you are and be like, if you have to change the way you act around certain friends, then they're not really friends. They're people who are judging you. And if they can't accept you for who you are and who your interests and what your interests are, if they say, oh, science isn't cool, they're not cool, basically. This piece of advice I love. And it's that the most dangerous thing you can do in your career is to play it safe. And I think a lot of parents, especially my parents, who, they worked very hard, they immigrated to Canada, they work very hard for what they have, and they're very afraid for me because they're like, you don't know what your degree is, or you don't know what you're going to do with your life. And I'm like, it's okay, I'm going to make it. And I think it's really important if any of you guys are really scared on trying out something new, to just do it. And parents, you should always push your kids to like just try anything, especially if they're a little tentative on it. Just do it. Like, for me, my parents were like, you're going to do every single sport. So I was that one kid who I did field hockey actually for quite a few, like 6 years or so. But, I joined the volleyball team, I joined the soccer team, I joined field hockey, badminton, squash, and I was the one kid that sucked at all of them. But I was there. I was like, I'm trying this. And no matter how much my dad was like, you were pretty bad at this, but you should keep on doing this. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna try it, and I'm gonna go out of my comfort zone. If your friends aren't doing a certain sport or a certain activity, just go do it anyways. You'll make friends, it's fine, don't worry about anything. You guys are so young. I would give anything to age back a couple years. I'm not that old, okay, never mind. This one I added specifically for this conference because I feel it's really important. STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math, I believe. But another term of it is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And I think it's really important to note that art is something very crucial for science, especially if you guys are going to be making things or innovating like I am. If I made a flashlight or any sort of invention and it was real ugly, and it was not aesthetically pleasing, but it was really bright, no one's going to use it. It has to feel comfortable, it has to look good, and it's, especially nowadays, everyone's always judging about appearance, blah, 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 but it's really important when you present a product that you've thought about the design, for example. That's just one way of looking at it. And for me, I've played the piano since I was in kindergarten. I'm really into film. My dad's always been really into film, so he kind of passed that on. So I think it's really important to have a balance between the science and the arts, and so you can get a much wider view. And whether that's educating yourself on like 20s and 30s films, which is what I was raised upon. I think the first film I ever watched, none of you guys would probably know it, was Alexander Nevsky. And it's this old black and white movie about a bunch of Russian knights made in like the 20s or 30s, and I used to watch it every Saturday. And for Halloween in kindergarten, I actually dressed up as this like full Russian knight, and nobody knew who I was, but I was like, I am Alexander Nevsky, so always be different. It's very important. So yeah, that's the end of my talk. That's the advice I wanted to give you guys. I told you a little bit about my story. I'm writing a book right now. I'm writing kind of like a memoir, kind of making fun of a memoir because I'm only 18, just to give advice on making things in my life. I have so many things going on, I won't even explain. But yeah, I have a YouTube channel where I just kind of follow around because I do a lot of trips, so I kind of put on whatever's going on in my life there. So if you want to follow that. And yeah, so thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a great time here.